Hey friends, today I'm going to be installing some landscape lighting. This is low voltage LED lighting, and I just want to take you through the process that I do or use when I'm installing these lights. These lights are manufactured by FX Luminaire. This is an uplight, an RS, and this is a path light, a PL path light. I've got 6 of each of these. I'll be attaching them to a 150 watt transformer and connecting them all right here in the front of this landscape. This is just a start. I'll be adding more lights in the future. So let's go ahead and get started, and I'll show you what I'm doing. Now these are the lights that I'm going to be installing. There's 12 of them. I've got 6 path lights and 6 uplights, a transformer, my wire, my connectors, other hardware, some conduit, and I'll be installing the transformer in that well house, and I'll just be putting the lights here in these beds. Now here's my transformer, and I will be mounting that in this well shed on the wall here. When we built the home, I had them put in a dedicated circuit just for this, and they were kind enough to put in a junction box that actually runs out to the outside. So I've run some twine down there to fish the wire through. Here you can see where this conduit comes out on the back side of the well house. You'll note that I've put an L on here, and I'll use that piece of twine to fish the 12-2 direct burial wire through. Then I'll put that down into the ground with this 3/4 inch PVC, run it off to the side and over to my work area. Okay, so now we can see that I pulled this wire through. I'm going to run it up through here into my transformer, connect it to the terminals here. I'm not going to put a photocell on here, but I will put a control timer on here. So let's get started with the lights themselves. All right, so now that I've got the wire laid out just very loosely at this point, because I've got to go through these sleeves, but I wanted to lay it out so I'd know how much I would need to cut. Now when I go to install the lights themselves, it's a fairly simple process. I've got a stake, I've got the fixture itself. The fixture threads right into the stake, right like that. There's a notch, if you can see it, in this stake. So what I can do is put the stake in the ground first, and I kind of orient the notch towards where my wire is going to be. And with a mallet, stake in, drop this wire into that slot, thread the fixture itself on. Now I've got a good bit of wire that I can work with here, and what I will do with that, here's my end, here's my power lead I'll put a splice in there, and usually I go ahead and leave this bundled up so it's nice and tidy, unless I have to stretch it out for something else. Super simple. Now, something I want to note with the uplights here, you'll notice there's a locking nut. What this does is it threads on here so that I can adjust the angle at which the light shows up. It's not 100% necessary, but I like to go ahead and put that on. So I'm going to thread this locking nut on here. This then is going to thread onto the body of the fixture, like so. Then when I put the stake on, I can adjust it to ensure that I have it pointed in the direction that I want. So I've placed the stake. I've got my locking nut on there. Slide the wire into the slot. Thread the fixture onto the stake. Now I can adjust this locking nut so that I can point it in the direction that I want this to go. So now I'm going to show you how I connect the fixtures to the power using dry splice connectors. So what I've got is I've got a wire that comes through the sleeve from the other bed. That wire will continue down this bed, and then I've got another wire that I need to go out towards the front. And at the same time, I'm going to connect this fixture to those wires. You'll see on my dry splice connector, there are 3 little holes. The idea behind that is you can put 3 wires, so you're splicing 1 wire into a continuous run. But in this case, I'm actually going to connect the smaller lead coming off of the fixture, and I'm going to put that in there. It's a little tight fit, and maybe you shouldn't do it, but it saves me on the connectors. And the connectors are not cheap. These are not like what you would find with just regular wire nuts. They run, I guess, about $1.50 a piece. So I'm going to put these 2 wires, these 2 here, and I've twisted them together, and I'm going to put that into this dry splice connector. Like I said, it's a little tight, and usually you wouldn't want to strip the wire first because it makes it easier to push it in to the connector. However, like I said, I'm putting 2 wires into that connector, so it causes it to be a little tight. There you can see I've got them coming out. Now I'm going to take my wire that continues on down there, because this is the one that comes out of the sleeve, and I'm going to strip that wire, and these are 12 gauge wires, so I'm going to the 14 gauge mark on my wire strippers so I can strip that wire off. Then I got my other wire that's running out to the front, and I strip this off. And again, I kind of messed up. I should have gone ahead and put them into the connector first, because once you strip the sheathing off of it, it will kind of push that. See how it's pushing that back? I've got to kind of twist it to get it through there. And where's my other? Here it is. Kind of want to keep track of all these things to make sure you're doing it, because once this connector is all sealed up, The only way to get it off is to cut it off and start again. You'll note on your wire, you've got a smooth side and a ribbed side. I don't know whether you can see that. You got a ribbed side and a smooth side. I usually put rib to rib, connect all the ribbed sides together, and then connect all the smooth sides together. I think it's just good practice. It's not crucial because this is alternating current, but just for my sake, I like to do that. Now, what I've done is I've twisted the wires together, and I'm taking this. It's a copper crimper that's going to fit down on top of these wires that I've twisted together. Now, there are some wonderful crimping tools that are rather expensive, but I am just going to use these to crimp that on there. There you go. So there you can see I've got those crimped together. Now I pull this up, and again it's pretty tight because I've got those two wires coming in. Now it's down in there. I've got the cap, which has a gel in it. This will make it waterproof. This goes on top of there. And then I push it in tight. And there's my splice. I will do that for the other side. And then I will basically have two splices, one for each of the two strands on my wiring. And one of the nice things about these dry splice connectors is they're basically waterproof once they set up in there. And although it's not as important for these low voltage lights, if you get into the color lights that are color changing, they have a circuit board in there. If that circuit board gets wet, it will cause damage and it will no longer work. If you're not using a waterproof connector and just wire nuts, moisture could actually get into the copper and it will wick its way along the copper to that circuit board and cause it to short out. So it's good practice to use dry splice connectors. So here we go, we finished. And you can see I've got, this is the path light that is furthest from the transformer. You can see the light. I have it on now. That one and that one are connected to this main wire, which runs up, goes through the sleeve here. You can see the path light's all the way down. That light, the one on the small tree, and this path light all run up and connect into this main line that's running along here. There's another uplight. This is where I have a splice there. I've got another uplight here. There's my wire that goes out to these guys. Here I've got another splice. This wire runs out and picks up these lights. And my main wire is running along here, and what I did was I spliced it all off so that I wouldn't have all the lights in a series like daisy chained together. I wanted them to split off to kind of distribute the power a little more evenly. Here's my main line, which I will bury. This runs over to here, and it will enter right there. Got to put the cap on. I'm not going to bury this very deep. I don't like to. Over here, the wires will just go underneath the mulch. Here, they'll just go right underneath the sod. I do this so that it's easier to find if I cut it or what have you. Here I've got my transformer hooked up. I'll tidy this up a little bit. And you can see my wires coming in, connected I don't have the timer on it yet, which I left in my truck and it's not here, so I will get that. But for right now, the power is switched on. That'll turn it off. Once I have the timer, this will plug into the timer. The timer will plug into this outlet. This controls this outlet, so when I turn it on, I'll have power to the timer, which will then send power to the transformer itself, which will come out here, transform it down to 12 volt from 120 volt, run it out through that junction box and the conduit that they put in there for me. And it goes on out, and we've got our landscape lights. This took me about 3 hours, but it can take longer depending on what you've got to deal with. So we'll come back out here this evening and check it to see what it looks like. Okay, so here's the final product, and the lights are not on yet. I just wanted to show what this looks like without the lights. And now with the lights.